My name is Rosie, and I'm 59 years old. For 30 years, Christmas in our old Victorian house meant the smell of gingerbread cookies baking twinkling lights wrapped around every banister, and the sound of little voices squealing with excitement on Christmas morning. It was our sacred tradition, something I treasured more than any expensive gift. But this year, something felt different. The house seemed quieter, the decorations felt heavier in my hands, and when I picked up my phone to text my daughter-in-law about our holiday plans, I had no idea that her response would shatter everything I thought I knew about my place in this family. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button if you're excited to hear this story, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that touch the heart. Now let me tell you about the text message that changed everything. Looking back now, I realize how blessed Dave and I were during our 35 years of marriage. We bought our Victorian house on Maple Street back in 1989 when Marcus was just a toddler running around in diapers. Dave used to joke that the house chose us, not the other way around. With its wraparound porch bay windows and original hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, it felt like stepping into a Norman Rockwell painting. Christmas was always magical in our home. Every December 1st, Dave would haul down boxes from the attic while I sorted through ornaments collected over decades. Each one had a story. The ceramic angel Marcus made in second grade, slightly lopsided, but precious. The silver bells from our first Christmas as newlyweds. The handprint ornaments from when Marcus was small, his tiny fingers preserved in clay. Dave had this wonderful tradition of reading The Night Before Christmas every Christmas Eve, wearing his red flannel pajamas and doing different voices for all the characters. Marcus would curl up between us on the old leather sofa, his eyes wide with wonder, even when he got older and knew Santa wasn't real. Those were the moments that made our house a home. When Marcus brought Amber home 5 years ago, fresh from their courthouse wedding, I was over the moon. Finally, another woman in the house. Someone to share recipes with, to laugh with while wrapping presents to carry on our traditions. Amber seemed perfect for Marcus. She had this infectious laugh and a way of making everyone feel included. That first Christmas, she spent hours in the kitchen with me, learning my secret gingerbread recipe and helping me frost sugar cookies with the intricate designs Dave always struggled with. I remember watching her play with 2-year-old Grace that Christmas morning, patiently helping her open presents and reading her new picture books with animated voices. I thought to myself, this is what family looks like. This is how our story continues. When Tyler came along 2 years later, our Christmas mornings became even more joyful, filled with the chaos and wonder that only small children can bring. But somewhere along the way, things started to shift. It was subtle at first. Amber would arrive a little later to family gatherings. She'd check her phone more often during conversations. When Dave passed away 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I thought grief was making me imagine the distance I felt growing between us. Maybe I was being too sensitive, too needy in my loneliness. The truth was, losing Dave had left a hole in my life that felt impossible to fill. He'd been my partner in everything, especially in creating the warm, welcoming atmosphere our home was known for. Without him, I clung even tighter to our family traditions, seeing them as a way to keep his memory alive and maintain the connections that mattered most. Thanksgiving this year should have been a warning sign, but I was too hopeful to see it clearly. Amber arrived 45 minutes late, claiming traffic was terrible, though I'd driven the same route an hour earlier without any problems. She seemed distracted throughout dinner, giving short answers to my questions about the kids' school and her job at the marketing firm. I'd spent 2 days preparing all of Marcus's favorite dishes. Herb-rubbed turkey cornbread stuffing with sage from my garden green bean casserole made from scratch, and my famous pumpkin pie with the secret ingredient I'd never shared with anyone except Amber. When I offered her a slice, she politely declined, saying she was watching her sugar intake. It stung more than it should have, considering I'd specifically made it thinking of how much she'd enjoyed it in previous years. Marcus spent most of the meal trying to fill the awkward silences, talking about work, and asking the kids questions to keep conversation flowing. Grace and Tyler were their usual chatty selves, telling me about their school plays and soccer games, but I noticed how Amber kept glancing at her watch. When Marcus suggested we watch the Thanksgiving Day Parade recording I'd saved for the kids, Amber stood up immediately. Actually, we should probably head out soon, she said, avoiding my eyes. I promised my mom we'd stop by and the kids need their naps. Marcus looked surprised. This was the first I'd heard about visiting her mother. In previous years, we'd spend the entire afternoon together playing board games and leftover turkey sandwiches for dinner. The kids always fell asleep on my living room floor, surrounded by picture books and the warm glow of the fireplace. I tried not to let my disappointment show as they gathered their things. Grace hugged my legs tightly, asking when she could come back to see me. "Soon, sweetheart," I promised, glancing at Amber hopefully. But she was already helping Tyler with his coat, her attention focused anywhere but on me. After they left, I called Marcus to check if they'd made it home safely. It was something I always did a habit from when he was younger. But this time his voice sounded strained. "Mom, we're fine. You don't need to check on us every time we leave." The words hit me like a slap. I'd been checking on my family out of love, but somehow it had become something annoying, something to be tolerated rather than appreciated. I spent the rest of that weekend wandering through the empty house, putting away leftover food that would mostly go to waste. I found myself standing in the dining room looking at the table set for 6, where only 4 had felt truly present. For the first time since Dave's funeral, I felt completely alone. The next day, I went Christmas shopping at the mall by myself. It used to be something Dave and I did together, making a whole day of it with lunch at our favorite restaurant and debates over what to buy the grandkids. Now I pushed my cart through crowded aisles, picking out gifts for Grace and Tyler while fighting back tears. Other families laughed and argued good-naturedly around me, but I felt invisible, like I was watching life through glass. When I ran into Linda at the toy store, she took one look at my face and insisted we get coffee. Linda had been my closest friend since our kids were in elementary school together. She knew me well enough to see past my fake smile. "What's going on, Rosie? You look like someone stole your last cookie." I tried to brush off her concern, but Linda wasn't having it. She listened patiently as I described Thanksgiving, nodding knowingly when I mentioned Amber's behavior. "Honey," she said gently, "maybe they're just busy. Young families have a lot on their plates these days." But even as she said it, I could see the worry in her eyes. Linda was trying to make me feel better, but we both sensed something had shifted in my family dynamic. I just wasn't ready to admit how much it scared me. December 15th started like any other winter morning. I made my coffee in the same mug Dave used to drink from, sat at the kitchen table, overlooking my frost-covered garden, and tried to work up the courage to do something I'd never had to do before. For 3 decades, Christmas plans had simply evolved naturally. Dave and I would discuss what to cook, when to exchange gifts, how to make the day special for everyone. There was never any doubt that Christmas meant gathering at our house in the place where memories lived in every corner. But this year, with Thanksgiving's awkwardness still fresh in my mind, I realized I needed to actually ask instead of assume. I picked up my phone and opened a text message to Amber, typing and deleting several different versions. First attempt. "Hi, sweetheart, just wondering if you'd like me to plan Christmas dinner like usual. Delete. Too presumptuous. Second try. Hope you're doing well. What are your thoughts on Christmas this year? Delete. Too vague. Third attempt. Hi, Amber. Should I start planning our Christmas menu, or do you have other ideas? Delete. Still not right. I must have written and rewritten that message 15 times, trying to find the perfect balance between hopeful and respectful, between maintaining tradition and acknowledging that things might be different now. Finally, I settled on something that felt warm, but not pushy. Hi, Amber. Just wondering about Christmas plans. Should I plan dinner for everyone here like usual? Let me know what works best. Love, Mom, Rosie. I hit send before I could second-guess myself again, then immediately felt anxious about the Mom Rosie signature. Amber had started calling me that after Grace was born, and I'd always loved it. But now I wondered if it seemed too familiar, too assuming of a closeness that might not exist anymore. The wait was excruciating. I checked my phone every few minutes, making up tasks to distract myself. I reorganized my spice cabinet, dusted the living room furniture, and started a grocery list for a Christmas dinner that might not happen. By 3 o'clock, I was checking my phone every 30 seconds. By 5, I was convinced something was wrong with my service. Then at exactly 6:30 p.m., my phone buzzed with Amber's response. "Oh, we're doing Christmas at my mom's this year. We already committed. Sorry, should have mentioned earlier. I stared at those words until they blurred together, read them again and again. Each time they felt like a physical blow to my chest. There was no warmth in the message, no explanation, no invitation for me to join them. Just a flat statement of fact that my son's family had made plans that didn't include me, and they hadn't even thought to tell me until I asked. The word committed stuck in my throat. They'd committed to her mother, but not to me. After 30 years of hosting Christmas after losing my husband and clinging to our traditions as a lifeline, I was being casually dismissed with a text message that took more thought to send than they'd given to excluding me. My hands shook as I called Linda, needing to hear another human voice before I completely fell apart. "Linda, can you talk?" My voice came out smaller than I'd intended. "Of course, honey. What's wrong?" When I read Amber's message out loud, the silence on the other end was deafening. "She said what?" Linda's voice was sharp with disbelief. "Rosie, that's not okay. That's not how family treats each other." "Maybe I'm overreacting," I said, though I knew I wasn't. "Maybe they just want to share holidays between both sides of the family." "Don't make excuses for them," Linda said firmly. "If they wanted to alternate holidays, that's a conversation you have together as adults. You don't just disappear from someone's life with a text message." I tried calling Marcus, but his phone went straight to voicemail. I sent him a text. "Can we talk when you have a minute? It's important." His response came 2 hours later. "Mom, we can talk about this later. I'm at work." That's when I realized this wasn't just about Amber's thoughtlessness. Marcus knew. He'd known about their plans and hadn't said anything. My own son had chosen to let me find out through an impersonal text message rather than have an honest conversation with his mother. I sat in Dave's old recliner that night, surrounded by the Christmas decorations I'd been slowly unpacking, and felt more alone than I had since the day he died. 3 days of silence followed. 3 days of me jumping every time my phone made a sound, hoping it would be Marcus calling to explain or apologize. Instead, I got promotional texts from stores and automated reminders about appointments. The quiet in my house felt different now, not peaceful, but heavy with abandonment. Finally, on December 18th, Marcus showed up at my door. I could see the tension in his shoulders before he even spoke, the way he avoided eye contact as I led him into the kitchen. This was my boy, the child I'd rocked to sleep and cheered for at Little League games, but he felt like a stranger as he sat across from me at the table where we'd shared thousands of meals. "Mom, we need to talk," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Yes, we do." I kept my tone calm, though my heart was racing. "I'd like to understand what happened. When did you decide to spend Christmas elsewhere, and why didn't you tell me?" Marcus rubbed his forehead, a gesture he'd inherited from his father. "It's complicated, Mom. Amber's been feeling overwhelmed." "Overwhelmed by what?" He was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "She feels like there's a lot of pressure when we come here. Like she has to be perfect, has to fit into these traditions that aren't hers." I felt like he'd punched me in the stomach. "Pressure, Marcus? I've never asked anything of Amber except to be herself. I thought she enjoyed our traditions." "She did at first, but lately she feels like she's performing instead of just being part of the family." Marcus finally looked at me directly. "She says the house feels like a museum sometimes, like everything has to be done exactly the way it's always been done." Each word was a knife twist. My beautiful home filled with love and memories was apparently a prison to my daughter-in-law. The traditions I'd cherished and wanted to share were burdens she'd been enduring out of politeness. "So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to just cut me out entirely." My voice was steadier than I felt. "It's not cutting you out. We thought maybe taking a break this year would help everyone reset. Give Amber some space to figure out what she wants our family traditions to look like." "Our family traditions," I repeated. "Marcus, I've been building family traditions for 32 years, long before Amber was part of this family, and now she gets to decide that none of it matters. That's not fair, Mom." "Fair." I stood up, anger finally overriding hurt. "What's not fair is planning my son's life around holidays that apparently don't include me. What's not fair is finding out through a text message that I'm not welcome at Christmas in my own family." Marcus looked miserable, caught between his wife and his mother, but his next words made it clear where his loyalty lay. Amber wants to create new traditions for Grace and Tyler. She wants Christmas morning at our house with her parents doing things her way. I think that's reasonable. And what about me? Where do I fit into these new traditions? The silence stretched between us, and I had my answer. I didn't fit anywhere. After 3 decades of building a family, I'd become an obligation to be managed rather than a person to be loved. I knew about the plans 2 weeks ago, Marcus admitted quietly. I wanted to tell you, but Amber asked me to wait until closer to Christmas. She thought it would be easier that way. Easier for whom? Certainly not for me sitting alone in my house planning a Christmas that would never happen, buying groceries for a dinner no one would attend. I think you should go, I said, my voice hollow. I need some time to process this. Marcus hesitated at the door. Mom, we can figure something out for New Year's, or maybe we could visit the day after Christmas. I didn't answer. The day after Christmas, like I was worthy of their leftover time, but not the main event. After he left, I sat in my empty kitchen and realized that everything I'd thought I knew about my place in my son's life had been an illusion. I'd been tolerated, not treasured, and that hurt worse than any loss I'd ever experienced. The week between Marcus's visit and Christmas Eve was the darkest I'd experienced since Dave's funeral. I wandered through my house like a ghost, looking at the half-unpacked Christmas decorations and feeling ridiculous for having started the process at all. The stockings I'd hung hopefully on the mantel mocked me with their emptiness. Grace and Tyler's stockings, carefully filled with small toys and candy I'd selected weeks earlier, now seemed like pathetic reminders of my irrelevance. I tried to maintain normalcy. I still made my morning coffee, still checked my email, still watched my evening news programs. But everything felt hollow, like I was going through the motions of a life that no longer had meaning. When Linda called to check on me, I could barely manage to sound coherent. Rosie, you sound terrible. Have you been eating? Honestly, I couldn't remember the last time I'd prepared a real meal. My refrigerator was full of ingredients for Christmas cookies I'd never bake and a turkey I'd never cook. I'm fine, I lied. Just tired. Don't you dare find me, Rosie Ellen Thompson. I'm coming over. When Linda arrived with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, she found me sitting in my pajamas at 3 p.m, staring at a Christmas movie I wasn't really watching. Oh, honey, she said, setting down the food and pulling me into a hug. This has got to stop. What's the point? I asked, feeling tears start again. Apparently, everything I thought mattered doesn't. Everything I built, all those years of traditions and love and making memories, it was just something they endured. Linda sat down beside me, her face serious. Listen to me very carefully. You are not responsible for other people's inability to appreciate what you've given them. You spent 3 decades creating beautiful memories for your family. That has value whether they recognize it or not. But what do I do now? Sit here alone feeling sorry for myself? No, Linda said firmly. You remind yourself that you're a vibrant 59-year-old woman with a lot of love to give, and if your son's family doesn't appreciate that love, then you find people who do. Her words sparked something in me I hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope exactly, but a small flame of defiance. What if I hosted Christmas anyway? I said suddenly. What if I invited people who actually want to be here? Linda's eyes lit up. Now you're talking. Who says Christmas dinner has to be family only? That night, for the first time in a week, I felt energized. I made a list of people in my life who might be spending Christmas alone. Linda and her husband Jim, whose adult children lived across the country. Mrs. Patterson from next door, whose husband had died last spring. Sarah, my former colleague from the library, who'd mentioned she had no plans. I started making phone calls, and to my surprise and delight, everyone said yes. Not only that, they seemed genuinely excited about the prospect of sharing Christmas with friends instead of struggling through the holiday alone. You know what? Linda said when I called her back with my final count. This might be the best Christmas you've ever had. No drama, no tension, no walking on eggshells, just people who want to be together. For the first time in weeks, I smiled genuinely. If my son's family wanted new traditions, I could create some of my own. And mine would be built on mutual appreciation and choice, not obligation, and endurance. December 23rd arrived with the energy I hadn't felt since before Dave died. For the first time in years, I was decorating for Christmas because I wanted to, not because it was expected. Every ornament I hung, every light I strung, was a conscious choice to celebrate rather than a performance for an unappreciative audience. I went overboard in the most wonderful way. The house sparkled with lights inside and out. I'd bought fresh garland for every banister and doorway. The dining room table was set with my grandmother's china, but not because tradition demanded it. I used it because it was beautiful, and this was a celebration worth my finest things. The menu I planned was a delightful mix of traditional and new. Yes, I'd make my famous herb-crusted turkey, but I'd also try the cranberry orange stuffing recipe Sarah had shared. Linda was bringing her signature sweet potato soufflé, and Mrs. Patterson had insisted on contributing her late husband's prize-winning dinner rolls. On December 23rd, just as I was arranging fresh flowers in the front hall, my phone rang. Marcus. Mom, I wanted to call about tomorrow. We were thinking we might stop by for a quick visit on our way to Amber's mother's house. The casual tone, like he was doing me a favor, reignited every bit of hurt and anger I'd been processing. Actually, Marcus, I won't be home tomorrow. Silence. Then, what do you mean you won't be home? Where are you going? I'm hosting Christmas dinner for people who want to spend the holiday with me. Mom, don't be dramatic. We can work something out. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. You and Amber made your choice about how to spend Christmas, and I've made mine. I'll be celebrating with friends who appreciate my company. You're really going to do this? Make us choose between you and Amber's family? I almost laughed at the irony. I'm not making you choose anything. You already chose. I'm simply responding to that choice by making my own plans. Marcus's voice got tight. Fine, if that's how you want to play it. This isn't a game, Marcus. This is me learning to value myself the way I deserve to be valued. After I hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. No more waiting for crumbs of affection. No more accepting whatever time and attention my family felt like giving me. I was taking control of my own happiness. Christmas morning dawned bright and cold. My guests began arriving at noon, and within minutes my house filled with laughter and warm conversation. Mrs. Patterson brought photo albums from her childhood in Iowa, regaling us with stories of Christmas on the farm. Sarah shared adventures from her recent trip to Scotland. Jim told terrible Christmas jokes that had us all groaning and giggling. The conversation flowed effortlessly. No one checked their phones constantly or seemed eager to leave. When we sat down to dinner, Linda raised her glass for a toast. To Rosie for reminding us that the best families are the ones we choose, not just the ones we're born into. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were happy tears this time. Looking around my table at these wonderful people who'd chosen to spend their holiday with me, I realized something profound. This was what Christmas was supposed to feel like. Warm, grateful, genuinely joyful. At exactly 8 p.m., just as we were settling in the living room with coffee and pie, the doorbell rang. Through the frosted glass, I could see familiar silhouettes. Marcus, Amber, and the kids. When I opened the door, their faces showed a mixture of surprise and something that might have been embarrassment. Grace and Tyler rushed forward to hug me, chattering excitedly about their day, but I noticed how Marcus and Amber took in the scene behind me. The house full of guests, the obvious signs of a successful celebration that had happened without them. We wanted to stop by, Marcus said awkwardly, to see you. How lovely, I said warmly, meaning it. Seeing them didn't hurt the way I'd expected it to. If anything, I felt sad for them for missing out on the wonderful day we'd shared. Would you like to come in and meet my friends? The 20-minute visit that followed was perhaps the most honest interaction we'd had in months. Grace and Tyler were delighted by the company, charming everyone with their stories and boundless energy. Amber seemed genuinely surprised by how relaxed and happy everyone was, how natural the conversation felt. As they prepared to leave, I hugged each of them goodbye without resentment. I'd found something precious that day, something I'd lost in years of trying to hold too tightly to people who were pulling away. I'd found my own worth independent of anyone else's validation. The days between Christmas and New Year passed peacefully. I found myself humming while doing everyday tasks, feeling settled in a way I hadn't experienced since Dave's death. The house felt warm and welcoming again, not like a museum, but like a home where good things happened. On December 28th, Marcus called again, and this time his voice was different, softer, less defensive. "Mom, can I come over? I think we need to have a real conversation." When he arrived, he seemed younger, somehow more like the boy I remembered than the strained man I'd been dealing with lately. We sat in the kitchen with cups of tea, and for the first time in months, there was no tension between us. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "A big one." "Marcus." "No, please let me say this. I handled everything wrong. We handled everything wrong." He looked directly at me. "Amber knows it too. She wanted me to tell you that she's sorry about the text message. She knows it was cruel." I waited, sensing there was more. "The truth is, we were both scared. After Dad died, you seemed so fragile, so dependent on maintaining everything exactly the way it had always been. Amber felt like she couldn't breathe in that environment, like anything she suggested or wanted would somehow dishonor his memory. It was hard to hear, but I could understand it. In my grief, I had clung to traditions like lifelines, not realizing I was inadvertently making them feel constrained. But instead of talking to you about it, we took the coward's way out. We made plans behind your back and hurt you terribly in the process." Marcus reached across the table to take my hand. "I'm ashamed of how we treated you." "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "But where do we go from here?" "I don't know yet, but I'd like to figure it out together if you're willing." Over the following hour, we had the most honest conversation we'd shared since he was a teenager. I admitted that I'd probably been inflexible in my grief, unwilling to consider that traditions could evolve without losing their meaning. He acknowledged that excluding me entirely had been not just hurtful, but unfair to Grace and Tyler, who adored their grandmother. We talked about boundaries, about the difference between honoring the past and being imprisoned by it. We discussed how future holidays might work, how to balance time between both sides of the family without anyone feeling excluded or obligated. "What if we alternated major holidays?" Marcus suggested. "Christmas with Amber's family one year, with you the next. And maybe we could create some new traditions that belong to all of us." It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't what I'd always dreamed of, but it was honest and respectful. More importantly, it was a conversation, not a unilateral decision imposed on me. 2 days later, Amber came by herself while Marcus was at work and the kids were at daycare. She sat on my sofa, tears in her eyes, and apologized more thoroughly than I'd ever expected. "I felt so overwhelmed trying to be the daughter-in-law I thought you wanted," she admitted. "I love you, Rosie, but I felt like I was failing constantly, like I could never measure up to the perfect family you'd built with Dave and Marcus." It broke my heart to realize that my attempts to include her had felt like pressure to perform. We talked about expectations spoken and unspoken and how to build a relationship based on who we actually were rather than who we thought we should be. By New Year's Eve, something had shifted in all of us, not back to the way things were, but forward to something new and more sustainable. I started attending a dance class at the community center, joined a book club, and reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my years of intense focus on family. Marcus and Amber began hosting Sunday dinners once a month, casual affairs where conversation mattered more than perfect table settings. Grace and Tyler started spending occasional Saturday afternoons with me baking cookies and hearing stories about their grandfather, but without the pressure of maintaining elaborate traditions. I learned something crucial during those difficult weeks. Love isn't about controlling how people express their affection for you. It's not about maintaining traditions at the expense of relationships. Real love respects choice, honors boundaries, and finds joy in whatever form connection takes. Looking back now, I can see that Amber's text message, cruel as it felt, was actually a gift. It forced all of us to confront problems we'd been avoiding, to have conversations we should have had years earlier. It taught me that my worth isn't determined by how much my family needs me, but by how I choose to show up in the world. Most importantly, it reminded me that there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. That Christmas dinner with my chosen family was one of the happiest days I'd had in years, not because it replaced my biological family, but because it reminded me that love comes in many forms, and joy can be found in unexpected places. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to stop accepting less than you deserve. Sometimes you have to let go of what you thought your life should look like to discover what it actually can become. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is teach people how you want to be treated by refusing to accept anything less. The holidays still matter to me, but not because they prove my worth as a mother or grandmother. They matter because they're opportunities to celebrate the people who choose to be in my life, to create new memories alongside cherishing old ones, and to remember that family isn't just about blood relations, but about the love we decide to share. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between keeping peace and standing up for yourself? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about real life, real struggles, and the strength we find when we learn to value ourselves. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve to be celebrated, not tolerated. Wishing you all the love and respect you deserve in your own families and chosen families alike.